Hello, my favorite stampers. Brenda Hillard here at createwithbrenda.com. I'm Brenda Hillard, independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. If this is your first time joining me, welcome. If you have joined before and you are a subscriber, welcome back. And I totally appreciate you, and I hope you appreciate the projects that I share with you. I try to do a couple projects a week, or post at least 2 projects a week. And then I also have a coffee and create with Brenda on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook and you'd like to tune in for those projects, please do. The past 5 Saturdays on Coffee and Create with Brenda, I did a farewell to each of the in colors, and the project I'm going to share with you today is using our current in colors, which are right here. We've got Bumblebee, Magenta Madness, Just Jade, Misty Moonlight, and Cinnamon Cider. The only color I won't be using on today's project is Cinnamon Cider. So there's lots of techniques to today's project. So this video could get a little long, but I hope you stay with me because I have some good tips and tricks for you in this episode. So let's start with what you're going to need for cardstock for the project. Our project is this. And what I have is a piece of Magenta Madness that measures 5.5 by 8.5, and it's scored at 4 1/4. So I am just going to give that a fold, and I will score it with my bone folder. And for the inside of our card, we're going to, what you're going to need is 2 pieces of basic white that measure 3 3/4 by 5. And one of them is simply just the insert in our card. So let's take our snail and just add some, kind of getting down to the, yep, that's the end of it. Here's another one. We'll add a little bit of snail, and then I'm just going to put this so it's centered on the inside flap of our card, okay? And we can set that aside because it'll be a little bit before we need anything for that. Our next piece of cardstock is basic white, and this measures 1 1/4 by 5. All right, and that's going to be for our happy birthday strip there. And I can show you how we're going to stamp that. So I'm going to bring in the Stamparatus, and how I did this to start with is, and you'll see this little star because I made a bunch of these. So what I did, and I'll redo it here for you, is I laid it down just like this. And this is the process you would use if you're going to do one. If you're going to do more than one, it's worth marking your little corner there, okay? So I'm just going to line it up on the grid paper so it's nice and straight. A magnet on each end. And then I'm going to take my happy birthday stamp. And this happy birthday stamp comes from the Sweet Ice Cream stamp set. This has the coolest font, and I love the sayings like this, you're so cool and you melt my heart. So anyway, that's in the JJ Mini. And the other stamp set from the JJ Mini that I will be using is the Pretty Perennials. And then I'm also using the coordinating dies, the Perennial Petals dies. And I'll show you that little tip trick in just a moment here. Okay, so I've got this down where I want it on that strip. Now I'm just going to take my acrylic plate and I'm going to pick up my stamp. All right. And my card design uses the current in color called Misty Moonlight. Now you can see my stamp over here, and I'm going to move our sample just for a minute here. I'm going to put a stamp pad underneath just to hold this level, okay? And when you try it with your stamp apparatus, you'll see what I mean. And then I'm going to ink up my stamp. Now, as I told you, I made a lot of these. So my Misty Moonlight ink pad is really pretty close to needing to be re-inked. So when I stamp, do you see how light it is? I don't know if you really can, but because it looks pretty good on my camera, but it is not an even image. It's not stamped quite like I want it. So I'm going to ink this up again, the happy birthday. And I get to do another run at it, and this puts it down exactly where it was, and it'll fill in all of those spots that I didn't have as much ink as I'd like. See how that's a much more bold and clear image? So that is the beauty of your Stamparatus, okay? So when you take these plates out, did you see that? 90 degrees and then straight up. I'm just going to set that off to the side. And I'm going to put our banner over here, our happy birthday banner by our card base. All right. Next technique, next tip, and I'm going to keep the Misty Moonlight open. I have a piece of the grid paper from the Stamparatus. They come in a tablet like this, and they're handy, handy, handy. I'm not going to make another template here, and as you can see, remember me telling you I made a bunch of these? That's why this is all inked up. But this little strip that I have across there measures 1 1/4 inches. Okay. And as what I did is I just taped it down on the end so that there's this pocket. It's kind of the reverse of another video that I have coming that blends the center panel, which I hope you'll check out. But let me show you what I've got going on here. So our piece of basic white that measured 3 3/4 by 5. I'm just going to slip this down in there. And this really doesn't matter. I don't know why I turned it, but I'm going to line it up with the grid so I've got it in there nice and straight. And then I use, it's this Scotch wall safe tape. It's a real low tack, and it works really good for taping your projects in place, and it won't rip the paper when you take it off. So now remember me telling you I'm going to use stamps from the Pretty Perennials. So the stamps that I've chosen are this pair of leaves, this flower, and then I liked these little dots, okay? And this is the Pretty Perennials. All right, so let me show you how this is going to go. The colors I've chosen to use, I'm going to start out with the Misty Moonlight, like I told you, with that outlined flower. I'm going to ink up my stamp. I'm going to stamp, and half of it is on the strip, and then probably about 1/3 of it is on the strip, and the other 2/3 is on the card. Then I'm going to go up high with one. I'll go down low again, and then I'm going to go just a little bit onto our strip. So I've got 4 Misty Moonlight. And now I'm going to do the same thing down here at the bottom. I'm going to ink up. And I'm going to stamp. I'm going to stamp. Okay, so there's that. Now, without moving that, I am going to bring in our Magenta Madness ink pad and the little stamp with the dots here that I talked about. I'm going to ink that up with the Magenta Madness, and I'm just going to place those kind of randomly across my card, both on the top and the bottom. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to close my Magenta Madness. I'm going to bring in the Bumblebee. And my Bumblebee is really close to needing to be re-inked too. So just bear with me here. Like I said, I was working on a bunch of these, and so I really used up a lot of the ink on my pad. And again, I'm just placing these randomly on the top and on the bottom. So there's that. I'm going to close up my Bumblebee. Do you see how it's coming together? And then when you take it out of there, it's really cool because it's got super sharp lines. All right. This is the Just Jade. And I'm just going to give a few leaves in here along the edge. I'll move this up. And here. And one more. So there's the top. I think I'm good with that. Then I'm going to turn it so the leaves are facing down, and I'm going to add some green to the bottom half of our card here. And this is one of those techniques or stamping styles that the card turns out a little different every time. So I've closed the Just Jade, and now we're really about done with the stamping portion of our project. But let me show you what this looks like. Did you see how nice that pulled up without ripping? And now here, look at my nice even lines. And then you can save this and use it over and over again. It's just, you know, it's just paper, but I do save them for a while. The next thing I want to show you is another technique, and this uses our gold leafing. So I'm gonna use tear and tape instead of the heat and stick powder. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a line of tear and tape across here. Tear tape, I don't know what they call it. Tear and tape is what I call it, but you can call it whatever you want. And it works really well for this technique. So I'm just going to put the 2 rows of tear and tape. And if you've not worked with this, it's a double-sided tape. And it's got that same kind of wax paper feel to it, kind of like the backing on our dimensionals. All right, so now I've taken the backing off. So now those 2 strips are really sticky. And if you haven't worked with gold leafing, I'm going to tell you right now, you want it in a big container. Let's see if I can go out just a little bit. That'll help. With a lid. And I have a blending brush in here that works really, really well for applying this. So I'm going to stick my project in here. I think you'll be able to see what I'm doing, but I'm going to pick up some leafing, the gold leafing, and I'm just going to push it on the tear and tape. And then just kind of brush it in. I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to do the same thing to this strip of tear and tape. So, can you see what I've got going on here? I don't want to take it out of there because this fly is all over. It's like glitter. But if I just kind of burnish this on with the blending brush, it works really, really well. And then all of this excess gold leafing stays right in my container. I'm just trying to get off as much of the excess as I can before I pull it out. And then I'm just going to run my fingers along where our tape was, and that just helps seal it down. Do you love that look? I really do. I think it's super cool. And I'll show you how I'm going to finish this off now. So that is a lesson in gold leafing and no fooling about the container with a lid. All right. So I'm going to bring in some Stampin' Dimensionals. And as all I want to do is put some dimensionals on the back of our birthday banner here. And I just have to do a quick snip. I guess I've kind of used up my whole dimensionals, but I don't ever throw these away. I always use every little bit of them. So I'll just take one of those and put it on there. And then when I put this on, I'm going to center so that you can see a little bit of that leafing on the top and on the bottom. Just like that. Do you like it? I know. I love this card. When I first did it, it was like, I'm not feeling sure about this. Now, to finish it off, I'm going to bring in our Stampin' Cut and Emboss. And the reason I have our large size or full size one is I want to show you when you make a lot of cards of the same kind. Here's a fun little tip for you. So as what I like to do is take scrap pieces or small strips of the cardstock I'm using, and I just lay it on my cutting plate like that. All right. Then I'm going to get my dies, and I want this one to be Bumblebee. I want this one to be Misty Moonlight. I want this one to be the Magenta Madness. I'm going to just move this up here. And then I've got a couple of the leaf dies for down here. So in one pass through my die cutting machine, I'm able to cut out one full flower, center, leaves, the 5 pieces I need to construct the flower. Okay, I'm going to put my top plate on, and then I am just going to move it through my machine. Okay. So here's what we have. And I'm going to add this again. I know I've said it before, but our new dies are pretty fabulous for the detail. You don't have to sit and pick a million pieces out like we used to. And do you see me throwing them? Sometimes when I do that, or that's a lot of times how I get those to pop out of the die. So I have my flower, I have my little outline, petal outline, I've got my center piece, I've got one of my leaves here, and then the other one here. So I'm just going to put my little tiny dies back over there so I don't lose them. But that really saves a lot of time if you're doing multiple cards and there's multiple pieces to your, or multiple, die parts to your project. So I'm just going to take these little bitties out of here, and you can see how easy they come out. And so is what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my silicone pad, and I'm going to put just some of our multi-purpose glue. I'm going to bring in the pointy tip from our Take Your Pick tool, and I have to bring the gold leafing back in. So is what I did, because when I put this together, I thought, gosh, it just looks kind of plain. And I have that beautiful gold leafing on here. So is what I did is I just drew like some flower veins or petal veins on here using the glue. And it's not exact, so don't make yourself crazy trying to get it to be exact. The other thing that works really good is like a fine tip glue pen. Stampin' Up! Does not sell them, but they're out there and they work really beautifully for this. So now with the glue on there, I'm going to very carefully open up my tin again. And I'm going to take my flower, and with my blending brush, I'm just going to brush on, kind of pat on the gold leaf, and then just brush off the excess. And we get a piece that looks like that. All right, the end of the gold leafing. I'm just going to bring my multi-purpose glue back in, put a dot in the center, add my petal outline piece and my flower center. Just like that. And then these I'm going to just put a little dab of glue on each tip to form the leaves for my flower. And I'll add just a little bit more glue on there. And then we'll add this to one of the big petals. And I'm going to give that just a second to dry. Put some dimensionals on the back. And then I'm going to add dimensionals to the back of this piece too. All right, take the backings off. And let's bring our Magenta Madness card base back in. And we're just going to center this on the front of our card. Doesn't it just scream spring? I love it. And then our cool gold leaf piece that we did. I'm just going to add it right. I don't want it to cover up our happy birthday. Right there. So there it is. And then you know me, it wasn't enough bling, right? So I took they're called the Elegant Faceted Gems. And there's some clear dots on here because I felt like I had enough color. There are some in color enamel dots too that, I don't know, I guess if you thought you needed more color, you could certainly do that. But what I did is just added a few of these. I thought they looked like maybe like little drops of morning dew. And I added those onto the card. I hope you love the project as much as I do. It's really fun. The gold leafing is really fun to work with. And I would appreciate your comments. You can subscribe by pressing the button below. And if you hit the bell, you will get notifications of all of my upcoming episodes. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.